Israel's prime minister says his nation has reached a historic turning point with death of a bitter enemy. Hassan Nasrallah, who led Hezbollah militants for 3 decades, was killed in an Israeli airstrike Friday. Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel had settled the score between the nation and the Iran-backed group. Israeli warplanes struck its underground headquarters in Beirut's southern suburbs, leveling apartment blocks in a densely populated area in the south of Beirut. Hezbollah later confirmed the death of the man who developed the group into one of Israel's most formidable foes. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu defended the attack. Here's what he had to say.
Citizens of Israel, these are great days. We are at what appears to be a historic turning point. A year ago, on October 7th, our enemies attacked us and thought that Israel was on the way to extinction. A year later, blow after blow, achievement after achievement, they realize how far their hopes have faded. Israel is on the rise. We are winning. We are determined to continue to strike at our enemies, return our residents to their homes, and return all our hostages.
Let's go to Alex Vatanka. He is a Middle East analyst and Iran expert for the Middle East Institute in Washington, D.C. He follows the developments and reactions from the region very closely. Thanks for joining us. How has the death of Hezbollah leader Nasrallah been received by Iranians?
Great to be with you, Melissa. To say that they're shell-shocked in Tehran, I think would be an understatement. Clearly, they knew Hassan Nasrallah, this individual that Iran has cultivated for a very long time, essentially going back to the creation of Hezbollah back in 1982, that this individual, who, as you just heard from Karim in Beirut, has been the head of Hezbollah for 30 years, is no longer with us. They haven't come out so far and promised anything specific other than asking for Muslim solidarity. Now, you can read that the way you wish, but it certainly doesn't sound like Iran is ready to fire anything at Israel any moment soon.
Yeah, I mean, Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has said that the Hezbollah chief's death will not go unavenged. You just said that maybe there might not be a response soon, but what might a response look like?
Look, I mean, obviously they have tools in their toolbox in terms of missiles and drones and so forth. And we saw some of that back in April when they did attack Israel in retaliation for the Israeli strike on the Iranian consulate in Damascus. But overall, listening to Ali Khamenei, the Iranian supreme leader, I think they clearly feel like any kind of knee-jerk reaction, kinetic action against Israel might bring him into that point that they have sought to avoid for so long, which is that regional war with Israel, open war with Israel, from Iran's point of view, is fighting United States. The U.S. will back Israel up. The Iranians at least expect that to be the case. And I think that's the reason why they're so reluctant. It's very important to remember Iran doesn't really see much daylight between Israel and the United States. So when they talk about what they can do, they have to sort of seriously think about, are they ready to fight the United States? And they clearly are not.
But if Tehran doesn't respond with significant force, is there a danger that the regime would be viewed as weak? How much is that a calculus for them?
Look, I think that has already happened. They are weak. I mean, that's the image that Iran has in the region. Certainly, I think among the proxy groups across the Middle East, from Lebanon to elsewhere, Iraq and Yemen. But at the end of the day, the regime really always wanted to create these proxy networks in the Middle East, not because it intended to get itself involved in a regional war. Exactly the opposite has been the Iranian sort of mission here, to have what they call forward defense. Have your Arab partners out there do the fighting on your behalf. But the situation right now is that Iran has to ask itself, are they ready to go to war on behalf of an Arab ally, in this case Hezbollah? And I'm really, frankly, not sure if they are.
Now, with Hezbollah and Hamas both severely diminished, does Iran even have a strategy?
Well, that's a big question because they can choose to de-escalate. They can choose to focus on their national interests, focus on their economy, focus on things that very specifically would serve Iranian interests, such as a new nuclear deal, release or relief from sanctions and so forth. These are the sort of things the Iranian regime could do, which I think would be applauded by the Iranian people. But again, that's a decision the regime has to make. Someone like Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader, who's been there for about 40-some years, or about 40 years, he is very much still ideologically committed to this fight against Israel. So we have to wait and see.
It's very hard to predict anything in the Middle East, but do you believe this will turn into a prolonged war in the region?
I can't predict what will happen. I couldn't predict the killing of Hassan Nasrallah just a few days ago. But what I can tell you is I think the Iranians are hoping that this is not going to turn into a regional war that will suck them in.
Alex Vatanka, Middle East analyst and Iran expert for the Middle East Institute in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Melissa.
Israel's conflict with Hezbollah has sparked an exit of thousands of people out of Lebanon since last week's pager attack. Large crowds have been gathering at border crossing points between Lebanon and Syria, trying to leave the country. The UN estimates at least 90,000 people have fled their homes in Lebanon in the last few days. Some of them are internally displaced, seeking refuge from the Israeli bombing of southern Lebanon. For more, let's go to Rula Amin, the Lebanon regional spokesperson for the UN Refugee Agency in Beirut. Welcome to the program. Tens of thousands have fled from Lebanon to Syria in the last 72 hours. What kind of conditions await people there? Rula, I don't think I can hear you. Oh, there we go. There we go.
According to our estimates, well over 40,000 Syrians and Lebanese have crossed the border into Syria. They are fleeing the bombings in Lebanon, and they crossed the border exhausted, traumatized. They need shelter, they need food, they need medical attention. Many of them have reached the border on foot. Even those who came with cars, the journey that got them to the border from southern Lebanon or from other areas in Lebanon, it took hours because many other people were also leaving. So more than 40,000 of them have crossed the border and now are in Syria. UNHCR is on the other side. We provided urgent relief along with the Syrian Arab Red Crescent. So we give water, we give food, we give shelter, hope, a temporary place where they can rest. But then they moved on, and they are going to need a lot of support in order to survive what they have gone through. But it's good to remember as well that most of the people who had fled the violence and had to flee their homes in Lebanon are still in Lebanon. Only in the past 5 days, more than 118,000 Lebanese and Syrian refugees and other refugees have had to flee their homes, leaving with nothing, trying to find a safe place to stay at. But with the bombing now, with the Israeli bombing extending into new areas in Lebanon, the areas that they can find or can deem as safe and head to are shrinking. So they are on the move every day.
What can you tell us about the situation for those who are internally displaced inside Lebanon? This is a government that has struggled domestically and has, in many ways, barely been present in the first place. What is the situation inside Lebanon?
It's a humanitarian catastrophe. It seriously is, because prior to this conflict, Lebanon has been going through a very severe economic crisis. Many of the people in Lebanon were not able to secure enough food for their children. The poverty has deepened among Lebanese and refugees in Lebanon. And then the conflict escalated in the past 5 days, but it has been ongoing since October, which meant the waves of people who had been displaced had been increasing, but some of them have been displaced for 10 months. And it's very hard for them to be able to survive this conflict. They are running away from the bombings. They are trying to find a safe place. With the expanded areas that are being bombed, they have to move again. The government has established these, what we call makeshift shelters in schools and colleges, but it's not enough. Not everybody has access to these shelters. And the other thing to remember, this also disrupts the life for other Lebanese, because now students and children cannot go to school because these schools now are hosting internally displaced people. They need a lot of things. The humanitarian needs for this population is huge.
Right.
They need water, they need food, they need healthcare. And we are on the ground, we're helping the Lebanese, we are helping the Syrian refugees. But honestly, the most thing that they need is safety. They need to be protected from the bombings. And that's why the UNHCR and the rest of the UN keep on calling and stressing and appealing for the protection of civilians. They must be spared, and they should pay the price for this conflict.
Rula Amin, spokesperson for the UN Refugee Agency in Beirut, thank you so much for joining us.